We listen to him during the afternoons on Sports Take, find out what his opinions on the Eagles are because he's only been covering them for years. And he didn't get to share them these last couple of days. Glad he gets to do just that with us here on Birds 365, Mr. Derrick Gunn. D-Gun chomping at the bit to get on with us here today with the fact that the Eagles have done as much good, bad, and indifferent these last couple of days as free agency's kicked in.
D-Gun, you're muted.
See, that's what happens when you get a
Take a couple of days off and forget to turn on the microphone.
You forget all the basics, man. Yeah, you know, it's funny.
That's funny.
You look forward to getting some time off just to clear your mind and to get away from, as much as we love doing what we do, you know, we all like to get away. And for me, getting away this week is catching up in an abundance of honey-do lists. Like I'm just finishing up painting woodwork trimming around the kitchen floors. And I'm just, last night I painted 3 doors near the kitchen area, garage door area. So I got to go back and touch those up, spending more time with the grandkids and stuff like that. Right. But then when you see all this activity, all this feeding frenzy, which is what the first day of free agency is all about. You get start chomping at the bit. You want to talk to somebody. You talk to your wife and she's like, okay. Oh, okay. I'm like, you don't understand here. What's going on?
Yeah.
But yeah,
you had the same life as me, Derrick. I had to go back to work to get some rest. I had so much stuff to.
I know, man. And I'm not going to catch up. I'm not going to catch up with everything, but just to get a few of the minor things out of the way, you know. And you're right. When you get back to work, John, oh, honey, I wish I could do it, but I got a show to do.
So much stuff to do.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, get some rest, but we didn't get any rest yesterday because of Darius Slay. So, I mean, that was crazy. Complete 180. I mean, he said goodbye to Philadelphia. Yeah. He and his wife, Jennifer, said goodbye. They were going to be released. Darius was going to be released. All of a sudden, you have this turnaround. You know how things work. Darius he's going to kill me. Slay is still a Pro Bowl level player. And when you're a star player, you never want to go into that lame duck year of your contract. You want the extension. You want the guaranteed money. All the guaranteed money was done on his deal. The Eagles, on the other hand, needed to get the cap number down. So you have these loggerheads. And ultimately, it looks like Slay said, you know what? At least I like it here. This is a contender. We know the Eagles are going to be good again. My wife loves it here. That's a big part of it. He just did a 180. Is there any other way to explain this?
No. And as I reported yesterday, John, initially he wanted 3 years guaranteed. Yeah. Well, that's bad business for a guy who's 32, you know. Yeah. And let's face it, he played well in the first half of last season, but and there were games when people didn't throw at him, so we have to take that into consideration. But in the bigger moments, he didn't play that well. You know, and Howie is not one to shy away from spending money, but Howie spends money wisely. It would not be a wise investment to spend that kind of money on a guy 32. He would be 33, 34, 35. As we know, this is a time in a player's life, especially a cornerback, where you start to see a decline to a certain degree. So he backed off, and I believe they ended up with a 2-year deal for substantially less money. On top of that, he wanted a lot more money than what the Eagles were willing to pay, and the Eagles were never going to comply with his wishes in that regard in terms of giving him a lot more money. So they came to a meeting of the minds, and John, you're right. A lot of times when players start looking at the abundance of dollars that are out there, you figure most of those teams that have that kind of cash to spend are teams that are in a rebuilding mode. You know, they're not the creme de la creme of the teams that are close or have been to a Super Bowl or deep in the playoffs. And when you're at the stage of your career, you don't want to be a part of a reclamation project. You know, Houston looks appealing to a lot of people, but they don't have a quarterback. They got a whole new coaching staff down there. They're going to get younger a lot quicker. You look at some of the other teams around the league, you know, Atlanta's one of those teams. We don't know which way that team's going to go. Arizona, we don't know what that team is. So while money out there can be appealing, players get to a certain point, they want another shot at that brass ring. And let's face it, what happened to this Eagles team in the Super Bowl left a bad taste in a lot of their mouths. And, you know, a few weeks ago, we thought this was going to be a completely different looking defense. Now the defense is not looking so bad right now.
Who's going to be coaching up Darius Slay and James Bradbury? And if he returns, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They moved on from their defensive back coach, didn't get the DC position, so he took his act to Baltimore. What do you think Sean Desai is planning as far as positional coach for the DBs goes?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe they've already named a new DB coach. If I'm not
well,
correct.
They named a nickel coach, so it looks like nickel. They're going to go more specialized. Local played at Westchester. Got some Temple background as well. Rennell, I think it's I forget. I don't want to say. It's Rennell Williams, maybe. I forget the last name, but I thought it was interesting because I haven't seen many just slot specialists.
I haven't either.
I think, it's sort of that forward thinking the Eagles are known for. DK McDonald is still here, who was Denard Wilson's assistant. So maybe they elevate him. But there's still some shoes to drop when it comes from that standpoint. But D-Gun, I want to go back to the defense as a whole. I think you're right. Anytime. Look, the Eagles, they might have the best cornerback trio in football when you add Avonte Maddox and nickel. You get Fletcher back. That's nice. But you do have a hole up the middle. They lost Javon Hargrave, who had a tremendous season. You lose both linebackers. You lose Marcus Epps at safety, who played 99% of the snaps. The only time he came off the field was in blowouts. These aren't great players except for Javon, who was one of the best interior pass rushers in football. But they were really, really important for the second-ranked defense. Are we kind of just glossing over those losses?
I don't think so, John, because you can't pay everybody. You can't keep everybody. And when you're a team that gets to the Super Bowl, whether you win it or lose it, everybody else is circling like vultures to pick your bones clean. And that's exactly what has happened to this team in terms of coaching staff and key players. But those who departed left behind a young nucleus that already has a year in the system. You have a Jordan Davis. You're going to have to find out now why he was drafted in the first round. Can he be that player that wowed everybody coming out of Georgia? That's why you have a Nakobe Dean, who basically plays special teams. You didn't have to overuse him because you had Kazir White here. Now it's time for these young men to step up. Now you got to play in a whole new system. Will they flourish or fail in this system? We don't know. And people say, we're going to find out a lot in training camp. No, you're not. You're not going to find it out in OTAs. No. You're not going to find it out in training camp. You're not going to find out in preseason games. We will not be able to form an honest and thorough and fair evaluation, at least until about a month into the season. There's so many new components that have to be integrated on this defense. And when you have a veteran group of guys coming back like the Eagles now do, the coaching staff to a certain degree has to win these guys over. You're looking at highly decorated players like a Fletcher Cox, a Brandon Graham, Darius Slay, James Bradbury. So you've not only got to get used to a coaching staff, they've got to buy into what you're doing. And that's not an easy thing to do in today's brand of football. The components are there for them to have success. How will it mesh? That remains to be seen, and we may not really know until late September, early October.
Just a quick follow-up. I'm sorry, Jody, because I'm interested in that part of it. It is Ronell Williams, by the way, so he's the new slot coach. But the players were very vocal, a lot of them. Slay was vocal. He's back now. Marcus Epps is gone. CJ, we'll see if he comes back. But they all really, really, wanted Denard Wilson to get that DC job. What's your thought on Nick going outside of the building and bringing in Sean Desai at the risk of losing Denard? Because that's what happened. He left the organization and went down to Baltimore.
From my perspective, I think Sirianni wanted to go in a different direction with a different kind of look on his defense. You know, Jonathan Ganna's defense used to drive me nuts for one reason. When you have that caliber of guys playing on the edges on defense and you're playing 5 to 7, 10 yards off the ball, you're just asking for trouble. And sure enough, we saw that more times than not. I think with those corners, those are guys that are press corners. You look at how Kansas City played with those young cornerbacks. They bumped and they ran all day, you know, and they got beat. And you know what? It's a game of roulette. You win some, you lose some. And they got beat all season long, but they got better at what they did. And I just think with this wealth of talent that the Eagles have, that's the kind of defense they should play. I don't know if that's the size style of defense based on what I've read about him from Chicago. And of course, he was just an assistant in Seattle. But I just think Sirianni wanted to go in a different direction. I do know for a fact there was some tension between Sirianni and Denard. I don't know this part for a fact, but I believe the way it ended, Denard felt after presenting his case to Sirianni, he felt he had a good shot to move up to be the defensive coordinator as Brian Johnson did on the offensive side. When the bottom fell out, you know, it just got a little tense, and he basically said, I don't want to be here, you know, and they said, okay, you know. But to directly answer your question, when a coach makes a move like that, you sit down and you analyze everything that was good and everything that was bad. You know, Nick Sirianni to me said basically, you know, we need something different, something a little bit different. And that's why they went out and got a guy like Desai. Remember, they were interested in other potential defensive coordinators who took jobs elsewhere. So we don't know if Desai was actually their first choice or not, but he was the best of what was left out there, and that's why they decided to do what they did.
All right, D-Gun, let's take Miles Sanders' numbers from this past year and cut them in half. We'll just slice them right off at half. So that was 1,269 yards, 634, 11 touchdowns, make it 5.5. Can Rashad Penny give them half of what Miles gave him last year? 654 yards and 6 touchdowns?
Absolutely. You know, the key with him is, can you keep him healthy? But, you know, this kid's 215 pounds. He has the second gear, great acceleration, doesn't go down easy. The problem with him is he's always been plagued by injuries. You know, if you can keep him upright and breathing, he can absolutely give you that. You know, when he was on the field, he averaged almost 6 yards a carry last year. You know, for a team that really wasn't expected to do much of anything. And then all of a sudden, in the latter part of the season, they became one of the talks of the NFL because of how they excel. And he was directly responsible for that in terms of enhancing their running game. He's a good running back, but he falls in that category of if. He's a good running back if. You know, we all went into 2022 saying, if you could keep Miles Sanders healthy. Miles had the history of being injured. Lo and behold, Miles Sanders was there from start to finish, put up career numbers for himself, rushing, touchdowns, directly responsible with helping this offense get to a Super Bowl. But for whatever reason, and I knew this right after the season was over, the Eagles wanted to go in a different direction in the running back. They wanted somebody a little bit different. They weren't going to pay a running back that kind of money. The Eagles don't do that. You know, they don't have a feature back. And when I put out there that Kenny Gainwell could be the lead back, people are like, well, he's not the lead back material. You don't understand. A lead back in Eagles offense is not a running back who carries the ball 25 times a game. He's a running back who carries the ball 12 to 15 times a game, and sometimes he might not start. But Kenny Gainwell has shown he has the durability, ability, and the capability of being a so-called feature back in the National Football League. Doesn't mean he's their premier back. He's just right now at the top of the pecking order.
Yeah, you know, what's interesting to me at running back, D-Gun, because I do point to the passion of this fan base, and you brought up Miles and, you know, his reputation of not staying healthy. You know, Miles would miss 2 games a season, 3 games maybe, and that was a big deal. Oh, you got to be on the field. And they're signing a back that has missed 40 football games over the past 5 seasons. 40. Now some of it is torn ACL, broken tibia. There's nothing you can do about that.
No.
Is there a little hubris from this team thinking, oh, you know, our medical staff can do this, our load management can do this? I mean, it's low risk. They're not paying the guy anything. They can cut him.
No.
But I can't count on Rashad Penny. That would be silly, wouldn't it?
I'm going to say yes and no, John, and here's why. Every year, the volume of injuries across the National Football League go up. And we always scream about how these teams don't even practice anymore. Thanks to the latest CBA that the players have, they got reduced time in practice and all this stuff. And it leads to players getting more seriously injured at the beginning of a season, because when you hit the ground running in September, that's when it's 100 miles an hour compared to what you're doing in training camps. And even when you have those controlled scrimmages with other teams, you have a cap on how much you're going to do. But you look at what this Eagles team did, John, and they had 22 starters available for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. They had probably one of the, if not the healthiest team from start to finish across the National Football League. So whatever this training staff and this medical staff is doing, they do it as well, if not better, than anybody out there. And so maybe they feel they can bring in a Rashad Penny and turn his fortunes around in terms of keeping him healthier, keeping him on the field longer than he's ever been on the field in his young career. So I agree with you, but just based on what we saw from what this staff was able to do in 2022, I have to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm like you guys. I'm old school. I'm Andy Reid. You're out there 3 hours on the field. You banging helmets. You're doing Oklahoma drills. You know, the first day of hitting, everybody came from miles around to watch the first day of hitting because you knew it was going to be knockdown, drag out, people punching each other in the face. You could guarantee there's going to be at least two fisticuffs per practice. Those days are long gone now.
Yeah.
You know, this new era of football, I'm still trying to get used to, but it worked to the Eagles' benefit. And so I have to give them the benefit of the doubt until it's proven wrong.
D. Gunn, need your take on a specific position. John and I discussed it earlier. Somebody's got to play backup quarterback for the Eagles this year. John was crossing his fingers for Jacoby Brissett because he knows the coach's affinity for him. He got legit backup money, $10 million to join Washington yesterday. Yeah. That's the going rate. He was not the only backup quarterback to get $10 million. Several have signed for that number, including Jared Stidham, who I don't think can play a little bit, but somehow Denver decided he was worth $10 million per.
Yeah.
What are the Eagles going to slot in as far as the backup quarterback money? You got any at least darts to throw at the dartboard here as to who that could be?
You tell me, because I look at the list of backup quarterbacks out there now. It was bad going into the free agency, and now that you look at, you know, Stidham and a Mike White, you know, who just moved on from the Jets. You know, Baker Mayfield's not walking through that door. You know, he was looking for bigger money, so obviously he's not walking through that door. What's left out there right now is nothing that makes you jump out of your seat. Who knows? Could Gardner Minshew be back again? Is there a possibility we're talking about him coming back again?
Yeah, I mean, the longer he's on the market, I don't think he's going to get that chance to compete for a starting job. So as long as the longer he stays on the market, the better for the Eagles. No question about that. A higher profile guy would go down that route is C.J. Gardner-Johnson because D. Gunn, I thought he would be off the market very early. Whether it would be the Eagles re-signing him or getting a big deal elsewhere hasn't manifested itself to this point. I think that's a good sign for the Eagles. I don't think the big deal is there for him. How do you read that situation?
I agree with you 100%, but I'm somewhat shocked because I thought he would be the creme de la creme of safeties out there on the market. And you look at what Jesse Bates got down in Atlanta? Like 64 million. So if he got 64 million, what is CJ based on the fact he finished tied for the league lead in interceptions? We saw his hitting capability throughout the course of the season. He missed a few games because of that lacerated kidney, so on and so forth. But he's a baller. He's one of the best in the business in terms of covering center field, sideline to sideline. So the fact that Jesse Bates got his money and CJ is still out there is a little bit puzzling. But maybe CJ is thinking along the lines of a Darius Slay, a James Bradbury, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. We want to come back. You know, we keep hearing that these guys took discounts to come back here. Brandon Graham, there was serious interest from both Cleveland and Detroit. You know, talking to Brandon, I thought he was a natural fit. He would go home to Detroit for a year or two. His wife is from Detroit as well, so that would have been a natural for them. But he said there's something unfinished here, even though he has one ring. He said publicly, and he told me also, because I want to try to win a ring with this Jalen Hurts guy. And that speaks volumes in terms of what this organization has right now, the culture in this organization. I give Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman credit for one thing, and I always will. They build a certain culture here, and players gravitate towards it. They treat you like professionals. They feed you like professionals. They listen to their players. Howie Roseman has an open door policy. You can come in and talk. We saw the video of him and Jason Kelce hugging after Kelce decided he was going to stay.
Yeah, that was awkward, T-Guy.
I blame
Howie.
When you ever see stuff like that, John, you don't see that between front office and a player, and they're sharing a drink in the office and stuff like that. There's something to be said for the culture here. And when players start looking at other places to go, yes, there's a multitude of players that want that almighty dollar because they know this could be their one big payday in their career. They understand that. A TJ Edwards just signed a contract in Chicago he may never see again, beyond this. I don't blame, plus he's going closer to home. I don't blame him for that, But there are other players, especially veteran players. Look, what we have here is great, man. Locker room, culture, how they treat you. We have a committee where the coaches listen to you, the front office listen to you, and there's something to be said for that. Players like Bradbury, Graham, Cox, they've made their big money in their careers. Now it's just about sustainability. And if they're in a situation where we have a chance to go deep in a conference again that is suspect, not just a division, but a conference that's suspect again with a new offensive nucleus that's already intact, why would I want another shot at something like that compared to going to a Cleveland, a Detroit, a Houston, a team that's trying to rebuild?
All right, D-Gun, since you say the mojo in the building will still be the same and the culture will still be the same, it's one way to push that even further forward, and that's give your head coach a contract extension. Correct me if I'm wrong. Before the season, after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, they did get an extension done with Doug Peterson. Now, this team did not win the Super Bowl, but they came this close within 10 seconds, tied with 10 seconds to go. Will they get a contract extension done with Nick Sirianni before the season kicks off?
Oh, that's if knowing Howie Roseman the way I do, I would think that would be a priority after getting the Jalen Hurts deal done. Nick Sirianni has shown in 2 seasons that he is a quality coach. His offense is creative. Players gravitate towards him. Howie Roseman is very good at identifying people in the building they want to keep beyond their existing contracts. His history, his track record has shown when they've identified these people, they do everything they can to get it done. If I'm betting on Howie Roseman, I say the contract is done before the season starts this year.
Last one from me. Follow D Gunn at a real D Gunn on Twitter. Gun on One podcast. You got any big guests coming up, D Gunn, on the Gun on One podcast?
Well, I'm taking a few weeks off. I'm waiting to hear back from Brandon Graham to sit down and chuck it up with him. Trying to do one this week with him. But Brandon Graham, he'll text you for no reason and talk to you all day about stuff that doesn't matter. And you ask him a question, he'll take 2 or 3 days to get back to you. He's something else, man. And he's the kind of guy you can't get mad at him because he makes you laugh all the time. So so that's my next one that I'm waiting to find out about now. But right now is the time of year when I usually just back off the gun on ones a little bit, and then I'll pick it up again and start looking at basketball. We get closer to the NBA playoffs. Got to get some hockey in there. As bad as the Flyers have been, there's a lot of questions. They're going in a new direction with the GM. They've got to change the complexion of the nucleus of the players as well. And then after that, who knows? Throughout the summer, sporadically, depends on when and how I feel like doing it. I'll get Troy Vincent on, talk about league matters at some point. Troy Vincent and I go way back. Good friend of Troy Vincent. John Runyon. I love to pick John's brain. Who would have thought John Runyon, of all people, would be in a position,
be doling out bonds.
The guy who's considered one of the dirtiest players in the league. Are you kidding me?
It's unbelievable. And how ironic, D-Gun, by the way, How many ex-Eagles are in the league office and everybody thinks the league is against the Eagles? It's unbelievable.
The wide receiver that played
James
here.
Thrash. Yeah.
Thrash is even in the league office. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like Philadelphia Eagles of New York, man. But, you know, that's great. That's great to see that these guys transition into very prominent roles in life after football in a profession. We know so many guys it's difficult for them to make a transition into that second phase of their lives. It's so good to see these guys doing extremely well.
Troy, you could argue, at least from a public standpoint, Troy is number 2 in that league right now.
Absolutely. Can you imagine? Well, you know, he was vying to become the head of the Players Association, and that didn't pan out for him. There was some dirty pools going on behind closed doors in that situation. And he said, you know what? So what? And he elevated himself to like the second or third most powerful guy in the most powerful sports entity on the planet. You know, Troy Vincent is well-schooled, well-spoken, and highly intelligent, very smart. So I'm not surprised to see Troy sitting where he is right now in his career.
We know where James Thrash is. The question is, where is Todd Pinkston? That could be an upcoming done on one episode.
I talk to Pinky every now and then. Yeah, he's in Mississippi coaching. I talk to him like he'll text me once in a blue moon. He's out. He's still out there.
Is he
coaching football? Yeah. Well, you know, he took a lot of abuse in this city, but he is one of the most down to earth, nicest people you ever wanted to meet. And you know what? He's just a humble dude doing his thing now, very quietly and enjoying life after football.
Todd Pinkston equals Quez Watkins. Very similar players.
I think Todd caught the ball a little bit better than Quez does. I'm just saying. That's just my opinion.
I remember a couple contested passes going the other way with the pinky, doing a pinky dance. But both of them could get behind defenses every once in a while and make a big play. That's for damn sure. D Gunn, glad to give you the time today. No, you wanted to talk some Eagles. Thank you very much for doing it with us.
And we gave you a break from the honey-do list. Now you got to get back to it.
You know what? I feel cleansed now. I could talk some football with 2 expert guys that I have a lot of respect for. My palate is full now.
Very good. And you will fill up Monday with Rob Ellis and Barrett Brooks with the return of the Sports Take right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. D Gunn, have a good one.
You guys, thank you as well, man. You guys have a great day.
Our pleasure. Thanks, Derrick Gunn here with us on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout. Then we come back. You know what we got to do? Got to put a bow on the show here on Birds